you for joining us for today's NAC at Home program, the José Limón Legacy. My name is Laura Daly, and I'm co-chair of the dance committee. Today, we will talk about José Limón, dancer, choreographer, and founder of the Limón Dance Company, and how his legacy is being kept alive. This program is presented in partnership between the National Arts Club and the José Limón Dance Foundation. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Arts Club, we are a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts and to educate the American people in the fine arts. Annually, the club offers more than 150 programs. They are all free to the public, including exhibitions, theatrical and musical performances, lectures, and readings. For more information about the club, you can visit us at nationalartsclub.org or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For today's program, our presenters are Dawn Lilly, who is my dance committee co-chair, as well as dance scholar, teacher, and writer. Dawn will give us a brief history about José Limón. After Dawn, it is our pleasure to welcome our next presenter, Dante Puleio, the incoming artistic director of the José Limón Dance Company. Dante is a widely respected former member of the company, and among his many, many accomplishments as a performer, both nationally and internationally, Dante received his MFA from the University of California at Irvine. His work there focused on conceptualizing mid-20th century dance for the contemporary artist as well as the audience. As artistic director for the Limón Dance Company, Dante is committed to celebrating José Limón's historical legacy, reimagining his intention and vision to reflect the rapidly shifting 21st century landscape. Dante will show video of Limón dancing, review the Limón technique, and show sections of performances by the Limón Dance Company. And we've all seen it prior to this event, and I guarantee you it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful video. Now, I am pleased to welcome my dance committee co-chair, Dawn Lilly, who will give us a little background on José Limón. Dawn, take it away.
Thank you, Laura. In the 50s and 60s, José Limón was probably one of the best known modern dancers in the world. Born in Mexico in 1908, he was the eldest in a large family. His father was a musician, a teacher, and a band leader. Politics in Mexico at that time were almost as bad as they are here now, I guess. The family moved a lot, and eventually, when Limón was 7 years old, they moved to the United States, first to Arizona, and then when he was 12, to Los Angeles. So to a large degree, he grew up in Los Angeles, and he went to high school there as well, very early on, showing talent in art and music. As a result, he entered UCLA as an art major when he was 18. He remained there for a while and then moved to New York to study art more. Somehow or other, he got to a concert of modern dance when he was in New York. It was a concert being given by two German impressionistic dancers, and that changed his life because he decided he wanted to dance. He ended up at the studio of Doris Humphrey and Charles Weidman. Humphrey Weidman had both been with Dennis Shawn and left to form their own company, and school in New York. Weidman, as a choreographer and performer, was able to instill movements with character and characters with movement, both humorous and tragic. And Doris Humphrey, a beautiful lyrical dancer, was one of the first to really say that you could teach choreography, that it was a craft in itself. The very talented Limón very quickly became a member, not of the school, but of the Limón, of the Humphrey Weidman Company, where he became one of the best known of its dancers. So throughout the 30s, he danced with Humphrey Weidman in New York. He also danced in Broadway shows that each of them choreographed, and at least one that George Balanchine choreographed. In 1940, he left New York and went back to California, where for a couple of years, he traveled up and down the West Coast with the modern dancer and choreographer Mae O'Donnell and the composer Ray Green. They were a trio that performed all over the place. Then in 1942, he came back to New York, started to dance, but it was wartime and he was drafted. So he went into the Army and while there, danced and choreographed. When he came out of the Army at the end of the war, he came back to New York, started to dance and choreograph again, and formed his own company around 1949. And he did something very unusual at that point. He asked Doris Humphrey to be the artistic director of the company, which was something that was never done then. A modern dancer and choreographer formed his or her own company, and that was it. But Jose brought in this remarkable woman who was also his mentor. And the company started very small as a chamber group, and then by the early 50s, or a little after, had grown to a full-size company, performing both his works and hers. They danced all over the world. Under State Department auspices, the company traveled for months in Europe, then in Asia, and in South America. In 1951, Juilliard formed a dance division, and Limón was one of the first teachers there, and he continued teaching there until his death. As a choreographer, he had a sense of humanity. He always felt that his choreography had to say something. And it was really a fusion of dance and drama and music. As a dancer, if you ever saw him, you never forgot him. Or even as an individual, if you took a class with him, if you saw him on the street, or if you saw him on stage. He had a over 6 feet tall, with a wonderful, strong, developed body that was almost Greek in its proportions. He had a face that I wouldn't say had angles. I think it was chiseled with angles. That's the only thing one could say about it. And he had piercing, dark eyes, which you could see from the highest balcony in any theater. The critic Clyde Barnes once wrote something about him that I just wanted to quote briefly. And he said, "He moved through the world like a prince with dignity, elegance, and authority." And with that, I give Dante, Mr. Limón.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, National Arts Club. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk about José Limón, talk about the direction of the Limón Company, and show both his work as a dancer and his work as a choreographer. So we'll start off with talking about him as a dancer. As Dawn was mentioning, he was a masterful and powerful performer. People often spoke of his intense focus and his towering majesty. He was hailed as the greatest male dancer of his time. And we have a short video to give you an experience of what it was like to see him. We can cue up that tape when we're ready, Nadine. We're going to start off with a solo from Missa Brevis, choreographed in 1958. In this next video, this is Jose performing Sonata for two cellos. There's no music for this, so no need to adjust your audio. In the first video, it's worth noting he was over 50 years old performing that. And here you can see the width of his body. And we're talking about a man over 6 feet tall dancing in the 1940s, using his expression in a way that had never been seen before. An extended physicality that was absolutely remarkable and completely unforgettable. You'll see moments of suspension, see reach and opposition. And here in this last video, you'll see him performing his own choreography in chaconne. The music is Bach's chaconne. This is filmed at Jacob's Pillow. You can see the ferociousness and ferocity of his movement. The power of an artist of color dancing like this in his time was completely unheard of. And that is José Limón dancing. Now, to develop the mind and body for this work, Limón was less interested in codifying a technique, but working with a series of principles that paralleled the human experience. These principles, often known as the Humphrey, Weidman, and Limón principles, talk about the difference between doing and being. We can do, which is a virtuosic movement, and then we allow things to happen, natural momentum. And to find the weight of our body and to find how those principles resonate within us, we look at breath as a human experience, something all of us do every day, whether we are aware of it or not. It continues to happen. We look at weight in our relationship to gravity. Often we talk about fall and recovery, and how in this moment in time right now, we're experiencing that globally. Suspension and opposition. How is space defined when there are two opposing forces, and how does the body suspend against gravity in that moment? We look at initiation, where movement comes from. Isolating body parts. Jose talks about the body as an orchestra. So maybe you're using the knee or just the elbow to express something. We talk about succession, which is movement going from and then through the body and out. We look at rebound. So if you're to drop a ball on the floor, boom, and it comes back. We talk about intention, why we're doing what we're doing. And then of course, Limon's base for everything is the rhythm, to the music that he's using or not using, to the rhythm he creates in counterpoint. And studying these different principles, they interlace with one another. It's hard to separate one from the other, but studying them gives a mover, gives an artist who's studying them the opportunity to explore texture in their movement. It gives them the opportunity to understand natural momentum. And if you would like to try, I think we're all gonna do a little movement demonstration together. So if you'd like, stand and join me. So first we're gonna start with breath. And as we take a breath in, we're gonna fall to the side and curve and come back up. We're gonna repeat that to the other side. Big breath in and curve and fall to the side. Big breath in and then expand, finding opposition, each finger reaching, and again, breathing in and opening. So that's part one. Let's try that one more time. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we'll do part B. So now we're just going to bend the knees, bending and lengthening. We bend, we lengthen, and we march in place to get the blood flowing to the feet. Again, we have a bend and a lengthen, and bend and a lengthen, and we're marching 6, 7, and 8. Let's take it from the top. Big breath in, and 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 3, 4, bending the knees in, here we go, and bend, and lengthen, and bend, and lengthen, and march, 3, and march. We'll do the legs again, and bend, and lengthen, and bend, and lengthen, and march, 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 march. Now in a class, we may do this in a parallel position. We may do that turning the legs out, opening and exposing the legs. And then we may do it in a wider stance to deepen the creases in the body to warm up the entire soma. Next, we're gonna look at some of the ideas of swing and gravity. So go ahead and raise your left arm. I'm raising my right arm. And we're gonna drop swing, and we'll chase the leg again, and drop swing, boom. One more time. Swing, release, over the top, and swing, release, and over the top. Good, that's part A. I'll show you part B now. It's called a double bounce. We're suspending over the top as if you're in a film and you're waiting for something to happen, that moment of anticipation, that, and we drop, swing, curve, and we'll go to the other side, and let's try that one more time. So big breath in, and release and curve, drop, other side. So looking at the swing, looking at the fall and the recovery, suspension. So let's take it from the top. We've got 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Other side, 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2. Double bounce and 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. Other side and 1, 3, 2, 3, 4. One more time from the top. Taking your left arm up high, and we're gonna drop swing. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3. Other side and 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, and 1. Drop other side, 1. Oh. And then the last thing I want to show you is how we use the lower half of the body. So that same idea of swing and release. So just swing the leg. You feel the knee bend. You feel the hip loosen as the leg swings. And then we'll sit. We'll bring it around. And then we'll push the leg up into the back. And we'll suspend, fall other side. One more time. And you can mirror me. We've got 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. We push 5, 6, 7, 5, turn the other side. Boom, bop, bop. Good. Let's try one more time. You can mirror me. I'll be doing my right leg. You'll be doing your left. We've got 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. We're gonna sit, sit. We open, open, and now push. Push away the space. We suspend. We fall. And 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 5, 2, 3, 6. We sit 7. We open. Boom. Reaching side, side, and we push, 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 and we fall. So in the company and in the work, we talk a lot about how the movement echoes what we're doing in life. So a moment like that suspension that we're holding before we fall. If I were to go to a film and then I would tell you about the film afterwards, I would go, oh, that was a very suspenseful part of the film. And you would get no sense of what that means. But if I'm talking about the film and I'm like, and the girl was walking up the stairs and I didn't know what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden you're engaged with me. You understand the physicality of that moment of you don't know what's going to happen. You start getting excited. Oh my, that's suspension, that feeling. We tried to find that moment of anticipation, that moment that makes the audience go, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? And we try for it. Every single time we go out on stage and try and do this work, we're trying to find those moments of authenticity, of a moment when we're actually reaching for something, reaching, and eventually we'll fall. And then how we recover defines the kind of artist we are and defines the story we're telling. So what does all that mean? How does that relate to the stories that Jose tells? So when Limón talks about his work, I have a quote here that I feel really takes it to the base level. He says, I try to compose works that are involved with man's basic tragedy and the grandeur of his spirit, as we were talking about fall and recovery. I want to dig beneath empty formalisms, displays of technical virtuosity, and the slick surface, to probe the human entity for the powerful beauty of the gesture that speaks of man's humanity. So we are going to look at some of his greatest works. First, we're going to look at a piece called Choreographic Offering, choreographed in 1964 to J.S. Bach's musical offering, and it was to honor his mentor, Doris Humphrey. So the work is filled with her movement motifs, phrases and shapes and formations on stage that she had created over the years, he made into one big, beautiful ballet. We do a suite of a choreographic offering now, and I'm going to show you an excerpt of that presently. And that is just the opening to the suite of choreographic offering that we do now. Next, we're going to look at one of his most famous works. It demonstrates his craft in storytelling and his ability to show dramatic intent. It is the Moor's Pavane, choreographed in 1949. Music is by Henry Purcell. Here Jose harvests the themes of Othello. The clip we're about to see, we are coming in just after the opening where the four characters, the Moor, Iago, Desdemona, and Emilia, have been introduced. The evening has begun and the characters begin to reveal their true nature. In that you saw Mark Willis, Jesse Obremski, Logan Kruger, and Brenna Monroe Cook as the four dancers. Lastly, we have the most recent restaging of The Traitor, originally choreographed in 1954 by music by Gunther Schuller. This footage is the 1955 film blended with footage from our last open rehearsal right before we went into quarantine. We were supposed to perform this work at the Joyce this past year, but due to the pandemic, we had to cancel. So before that happened, we had an open rehearsal and we were lucky enough to have filmed it, and we blended that with the 1955 film. The Traitor, through the story of Judas and Jesus, from the perspective of Judas Iscariot. This work was choreographed in response to the Red Scare and the McCarthy hearings in the late 1940s. And in the climate of fake news, mistrust, and betrayal, this piece speaks to the world we find ourselves in now. And that is our presentation for José Limón as a dancer, as a choreographer. And as you can see, the power that he brought to the stage as a performer, he was able to bring into his work as a choreographer.
Thank you, Dante, very much. That was absolutely awesome. We have some questions. One is from me, one's from Dawn, and we have a couple of questions from the audience. So here goes. So my question is, can you describe how your two goals, which is reimagining José Limon's choreography and his choreographic intent, with the part of your continuing his historical legacy?
Absolutely. So I often have gone back through the archives and looked at when he would restage a work. So there's a piece called There Is a Time he choreographed. And every time it would get restaged, he would make minor adjustments. He would change a solo, he would change movements, and he would make the work based on the dancers in front of him. So each time we have a new iteration that we're restaging, we have all of this material to go back to. We have all of these points of reference. And to me, that means his intention was to make the work speak for the artist in front of him and for the work to speak for the audience that they would be performing for. So that intention is the base from which the company will operate. We will look at the work, we will look at what he did, we will look at why he was doing what he was doing at that moment and how that translates to 2021, 2025, how that translates to our human condition, our experience living on this planet together now. And that shifts, that changes. So when we look at these different pieces, we can question why he made choices about gender. We can question why he made certain choices and how we can make other choices that still stay true to the intent of the work, but can speak to the audiences of now and in the future. Also, we're looking at where we're performing. Is it always going to be on a proscenium? Can the Moors Pavane be in a space that's interactive? Can you be in the same room as the Moor when he's running around? Can you be closer to him? Can you be inside of this Venetian ballroom from the 1400s? And how can we recreate something like that? So then you can look at the same work, but from a different angle, from a different experience, and build new relationships with this work that we've been watching and seeing grow throughout the years.
Awesome. My next question comes from Dawn, knowing the history of José Limón. He was very conscious throughout his life of his Mexican heritage and how many looked down at it, and also the fact that he was gay and not free to express that. Given the present climate, will you consider these aspects of his life in presenting his work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing question, and so many unexplored areas of his life. You know, we're looking at him as an artist of color. He came to this country and he made a vow that he would learn to speak English better than all of those that bullied him. And that came true. His vocabulary was far superior to anyone that he he was speaking with. We would hear these stories, or I've heard these stories, that he would use these words and everyone would be like, what is he talking about? We don't know what those words are. So he wanted to make sure that he was taken seriously as an artist. And I have to do so much more research about the gay relationships or about the queer aspect of his life. But from being a male artist in the 1930s and the 1940s to be taken seriously, to be a successful artist, he couldn't reveal those parts of himself. That was not a part of the presentation that would be taken seriously. And so much of his work was about showing the male dancer being masculine and what masculinity was defined as at that time. So he had to make sure that in order to be taken seriously as an artist, that he fulfilled that role. So I think through a lot more research and a lot more finding out what that time was about for him, I think we'll start to reveal some of those truths and how we can explore that in the company moving forward.
Excellent. Now we have some questions from the audience that were coming in throughout the event. So here's the first one. Sandra asked if Tonanta Zintia,
Yes, yes, yes.
it's a long word, it's going to be reconstructed and performed. Sandra said that she saw a video of it that apparently a piece that was put on Juilliard dancers.
Yes.
So she's curious.
If she can find that video and send it to me, I would love to see it. We actually just spent the past 4 weeks doing some archival research. We have a whole list of works that he's choreographed that we don't have the full footage for. So actually I've been reaching out to some of the original company members like Danny Lewis and Gary Masters, and asking them about their experience with some of that work and what footage, what maybe photographic images they have or stories they may have to start to look at that work and how we can bring some of it back. And yes, that was one of the ones on the list that I was like, oh, I can't seem to find anything yet. So we're going to do a little bit more research to see where that was yet, because I think Sandra's correct. That was set on the Juilliard dancers.
So Sandra, if you're still out there and you have some information about this video, you can email Dawn and myself at all lowercase dance@thenationalartsclub.org, and then we'll put you in touch with Dante. All right, our next question is from Gabriella, and she would like to know about the Limón technique as it deals with the hands.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of their position and you know, movement and what it represented.
Absolutely. So Jose had these massive hands, and the body is an orchestra, like I said, so each part of him played a different instrument, and each part of his ability to express came through all of these different parts. So many ways we use the hands in class. We do like a lot of internal rotation and external rotation. There's a lot of these gestures where we're splaying the fingers. There's also another gesture, especially from Doris, Humphrey, and Charles Weidman, where they're talking about flagging the hand. So you can have your arm in a normal second position like you may have, say, in a ballet class. But there was something about this expression of exposing the wrist and exposing the palm to the audience, giving that vulnerability. This shape here is a very different shape than that. And so here we're exposing some of who we are as an artist and who we are as a person. And that was a lot of the exploration and a lot of the ways that we could connect with a performer by seeing not just this virtuosic body doing these wonderful things, which we just spent a half hour doing, but also these are human beings who have something to say. And this use of the hand was such an important part of that expression.
Excellent. Our next question is from Jan, and she wanted to know who teaches Limón at this point in time, and if there is a beginner level class. And I think what she's asking is for non-company members.
Mm-hmm. Actually, great question. So every day at 3 p.m. on Instagram, we have a live free class. On Sundays, we do beginner classes. And if you would like more information, feel free to reach out to info@limon.org, and we can give you a rundown of all the classes that are happening. We can put you in touch with what classes are happening where. But since we're in this virtual space right now and we're not allowed to gather yet, we wanted to make sure that we were still able to connect and reach people around the world. And it seems social media was the best way to do that. And so we're fortunate enough that we have a very wealthy bank of incredible artists who are teaching the Limón technique every day at 3 p.m.
Excellent. We have some time for a few more questions. Here's another one. Did José Limón ever choreograph or perform Mexican-influenced dance, or was he just totally distancing himself from his background?
No, he has many dances that bring in the folk quality of some of the Mexican-based movement forms. There's La Danzas Mexicanas. There are several other works, and I'll have to go back through our list to find. La Malinche is another one. So yeah, he was speaking to that, but it wasn't the only thing he wanted to speak about as an artist in that time.
Excellent. Somebody just asked for a little more information about the classes on Instagram. Which Instagram account do they go to? Or do they just search José Limón? And
you should be able to find Limón Dance Company on Instagram, and it should take you right there. So just look up Limón, maybe Limón Co, Limonco, and it should come up on Instagram.
Okay, great. Let's see. Here's a question from Anna. I find it difficult at times to know when to look through a lens of historical context and when to apply our current modern perspectives to interpreting the movement. Have you found a way to balance these two different yet not exclusive ways of interpreting the work, which I guess relates to the first question that we posed to you about, translating his intentions versus the legacy?
Absolutely. So I think we have opportunities now that we can present dance in so many different ways. So if we wanted to bring a piece back and bring it back to its original true intention, bring it back to the original costumes, original lighting ideas, all the original choreography from the first version that we have that he choreographed, and we can present that in that exact package. Maybe we present it in a museum, or maybe we present it in a season where we're doing the works as they were originally intended before the evolution of time, before he restaged, before it was re-choreographed, before putting it on new dancers. And then we can talk about that. We can say, in this year, this is what was happening overall. This is what was happening in press. This is what was happening in fashion, in the news. And this is what was happening artistically. And this is the exact product of that time with dancers of today, obviously. And then when we recontextualize the work, for example, we were looking at the Traitor earlier, you can see the costumes were quite different. We had done a version a couple years ago with that original design. It was a heavy velour orange jumpsuit. And I wanted to speak to the dancers we have today. I wanted it to be about the body. I wanted to show how current that story is, betrayal and mistrust and not being able to trust your leaders that you've elected, and what does all of that feel like? And I think you can get to the heart of that intention when you strip away some of the other elements of the work and you show just the piece without those costumes that gave it a specific flavor. Those costumes put it in that era. And I wanted to bring the piece and bring it into this era by stripping away those costumes. So I think by playing with some of these elements that make up the work gives you an opportunity to see it in different ways. I hope that answered your question.
I think yes, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the logistics of the company during this COVID-19 pandemic. There is a long lead time, obviously, with booking, particularly in Europe.
Yeah.
So is there any long-term planning, or is there a date where you're hoping to go back into touring?
Well, this is
said, the EU today said that they're going to ban all Americans because they don't feel that this country is taking care of business in terms of the virus. But they haven't made that decision yet, which of course would add a whole mess of trouble for companies like yours.
Yes. Yeah. So we're going at it at two fronts right now. So the idea is, since this has happened, we brought the dancers in for a virtual staging process. And I mentioned there was a time earlier. And what we're doing is we restaged it all via Zoom. So Rafael Bomela, company member, former company member, lives out in California. We hopped on Zoom every day from 12 to 4, and he gave company class, and we restaged the work. Fortunately, there is a time suits that work really well, suits this paradigm really well with so many solos. So we're able to explore what that was in this new way of working. So now the dancers got to engage with the work in a new way. We're making a dance film out of it. So if we're not able to perform, we're still able to supply presenters with current exciting material that they can then engage their audiences with. On top of that, we're planning for a January 4th start. In the meanwhile, we're looking at the possibility of holding a residency where we can isolate and not have to worry about being in places where we're traveling and we're going to all these different places every day, but the company can be somewhere else and isolate themselves, and then we can spend 3 or 4 weeks rehearsing, like the sports teams are doing. They're going off and doing a thing so they're doing their training. So we're thinking about that same model to see how it apply to an artistic organization.
Excellent. Yes, I hope it all works out for your company. There's just the arts are just being devastated by this. But I will say that it seems amazing and wonderful to me that the internet can provide such ability to stay connected to an audience and bring in some new people as well. So it's all making the best of a bad situation at least.
Every time something comes at us, I'm excited to find the way we can overcome it. I think each time something comes at us, okay, great, that happened. How can we fall, and then how can we recover?
Right. I have time. Let's see. We have time for one more question. How the Limón body language became a modern technique.
That's a great question. I think because the work ended up staying so relevant and continues to stay so relevant, the interest in learning how to do that has ingrained itself into modern dance education. I think that we have a long way to go in terms of what American culture considers valuable information for dance training. I think Limón is one of the voices that's important. It has blended itself well and supplied an inspiration to grow from, because it's principles that can be applied on a variety of bodies. And those bodies can take that information and use their own artistry to grow from it. So we're not trying to fit into a mold, but trying to inspire and create the individual artist. And I think that has been part of the reason it has continued to thrive for all these years.
Excellent. Well, it is 4 o'clock, so sadly we have to end this event. Dante, thank you very much. This was amazing. I'm hoping that a lot of people will now understand the beauty of José Limón and his company and all of his work. I wish you a great deal of luck in your continuing his legacy and keeping the company healthy, wealthy, and touring. And Dawn, many thanks. Great synopsis of José's life. To the audience, thank you very much for being a part of this. If you have any questions or want to know more about dance at the National Arts Club, please feel free to email Dawn and myself. It's dance@thenationalartsclub.org. So have a wonderful afternoon. Everybody, please stay safe. Thanks to all. Bye.